Okay, so let's start again. So Alex is here this week to talk with us about GAO Simple Auth, the library he has been doing to ease authentication on App Engine. So first, Alex, can you talk a bit more about you? Who are you? Where are you based? And what are you working on?
All right, sure. I'm Alex Vagin. I worked at the University of Trento for several years, managing internal infrastructure and developing in-house applications. And just recently, I left that job to work on my own startup with a couple of other guys, and we call it Cloudware. So yeah, the University of Trento is. So this is where I've been living for the past 10 years. Though I'm not Italian, and I was born in Ukraine, and I still have Ukrainian citizenship. So yeah.
Okay, so you are an Ukrainian based in Italy who work for university and knows started a new startup. That's nice. And so, when did you start using App Engine? And what are you using App Engine for now?
Right. So I did have a look at it when you guys just announced it. I think it was in 2008, but at the time I didn't have really time to start playing with it. So I kept watching it. And I think it was like a year after I started using it for real, like writing some applications. And well, a couple of applications that they are like still running. One of the applications that I really I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. Was my last project while I was working at the University of Trento, and this was. It was a website for a local event that's called ICT Days, and so well, it wasn't just a website. It had a few registration forms, and then it also had like RSVP thing for the PhD alumni, and then it also had like an admin part, like a little CMS or whatever system. And all of those registration data, they were being synchronized with Google spreadsheets in the background. And what's the funny thing is, it's all of this stuff up until today. This website is running on free app quota, and it was kind of funny because just the day before the event real event started. I was like watching the free instance hours quota, like going like crazy, but so I did I did some calculations beforehand, like kind of approximating. So I was sort of like 75% sure it shouldn't be going over quota, but I did have my mouse button on the enable building button. But I just wanted to experiment and see if I could really manage to run on a free app quota, and it did. It went like, I don't know, 98%, but it stayed there.
And you use some tricks in order to diminish your instance usage, or did you rely more on caching?
Yeah. So we basically started from scratch, and at the beginning it was I was just using NDB and just interacting with data store directly. But then as like the traffic was increasing, I realized that I should add some caching and stuff, and so I did. And yeah, it did decrease instance hours. And what's probably the most piece of instance hours that was taken away, it was by these background processes that were synchronized, they were calling spreadsheet APIs. because it's external API, so it takes much more time to interact with, right? So what I found out is that I moved that part to a backend, and that was awesome,
Yeah, because
because
you have another
yeah,
free collab for backend. So
yeah, exactly. That's what just there was one day I realized, wow, I mean, I also have a backend, so why wouldn't I move it to the backend?
yeah,
And yeah.
I wish that a lot more people were doing that because that's a really convenient way to schedule background tasks, and that's just an extended free Gola. So you should definitely target all your tasks you work if you have a free app to a backend.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I can only like speculate, but it really felt like when I moved this external API calling to backend, or I don't know, you can call it different version or whatever. So the average of the response time or latency, it was kind of like the maximum and the minimum, they were reduced, right? So I think it really helped the scheduler to to get to not to launch too many instances, or I mean stay up to the to
So
the right job.
it depends on the configuration of your backend, but basically the scheduling algorithm for backend is much more simpler since you get to control the number of instances that are running at a moment of time. And so if yes, the decision that the scheduler has to take for scheduling things on backend is much more simpler. And plus, since it's not interleaved with user traffic, since you know that this traffic, it's much more, the scheduler can really predict what will happen because he knows that basically all this backend, what will he receive is internal call from task queues. And if it's not a public backend, it's easier for him to do the scheduling.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, that's what it felt like. When I moved the backend. I mean, not user-facing requests to the backend. This is what actually happened. So like even like the whole response time for users, it suddenly like decreased, and it was pretty pretty
When
fast.
you are targeting task queue, what happens is that your task queue traffic is competing with your user traffic, and the scheduler will always try to privilege user traffic first. So, and when you are on the back end, you are not competing with anyone. So,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Your observation was right.
So yeah, I was pretty happy about that. Yeah. So basically, it ran on I think it's 24 hours free quota for front end and 8 hours of back end. So it was like that was awesome. Yeah. And yeah, and then well, I do have a couple of other like business-wise website, and it's one is the it's a website for a local restaurant, but it's not just like static pages. It actually has like they offer online orders, right? So and the guy whom the owner of the restaurant, I built for them this admin interface where they can add dishes and stuff and prices. So this they also accept payments with credit cards, and it's all running on App Engine. So and this app was running, I think today it's like about 12 months, so 1 year, and it was like the best experience I ever had, because even in the worst days, when App Engine or something infrastructure had some maybe bad days or something, I never had a problem with this website. It was like
cool.
Great, yeah.
And so, your company just launched something, didn't you?
Yeah, and exactly, yeah. And so this the biggest project, but it's yet to come, because so this the thing that we launched as the startup. It's an app. It's like software as a service, right? We call it BHD Hub. So it basically helps like there's a PhD school and there's administrative stuff. And from my previous experience working at the university, I found out real need for some kind of management software or service that would help the secretary and administrative staff organize all the students, professors, grades or whatever. And but the thing is, I started writing this app like well, quite like maybe a year ago. And when at the time when I started, I kind of had to start. I didn't have Python runtime or Java on the infrastructure that where I was running it. So initially I wrote in Ruby on Rails, right? And then like in these few months, I actually started rewriting it in Python. So we slowly moving to App Engine. But this app is, I think, it's going to be huge win for us, because right now I still manage this internal service where this app is running. And well, this one we actually offer it for many universities right now. So we do expect a lot of traffic in it. So we'll definitely be moving it on App Engine for sure. Yeah, it's just it's just not that simple because there's a lot many lines of code already written. So yeah, but I do have already like some admin parts running on App Engine, and so they're basically calling this Rails app through API, exchanging JSON data. Yeah.
And how do you authenticate the call between your App Engine app and your Rails app?
Sorry?
How do you authorize the call between your Rails app and
right. Well, in what I did, but it's it's kind of secret. But what I did is I created a huge token. I just didn't have time, right? I created this huge secret token, and I basically put this token into a header, and this is how Rails app knows that this is kind of App Engine app, right? And the interface on App Engine, I started using endpoints API. I just got invite, so it's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So you will be able to make that more secure.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a few more questions if you don't mind. So I would like to know, like, what is in your opinions, the current trend of App Engine? Like, as a startup developer, what motivates your decision to go on App Engine or to go somewhere else? And if you have any suggestion about how we should improve the App Engine developer experience or more specific feature requests.
All right. Yeah. For the latter, I have a list.
Okay.
No, just kidding. Well, besides that, it really auto scales. This is one of the I think it was at the beginning was the first thing that I kind of noticed that stood out of all of other features. And what I also like is that there are so many services around this platform. I mean, like the users services, whatever. A lot of like pipelining, a lot of frameworks or libraries around it. So you basically can do whatever you want. But I remember back in 2009 or 8, what really kind of impressed me is when I kind of started reading docs about App Engine, and I eventually got to this task queue and cron jobs, and what I saw there is when you actually kind of create this task queue or cron job, it calls your a URL, right? And you know, before that, so basically before App Engine, what I was doing usually is that I would have a cron job on Linux server, or I could have I don't know Redis server, and then I could have background processes, but still they would execute. I would still need to launch some of these background process instances, right? And when I saw this, and I was like, wow, so everything could be a URL, so you can call your application even for cron jobs. That was awesome. I really liked it. Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah, yeah, the model of App Engine is really based on URL and requests, and those can be like very short requests for front end, or like much more requests for task queue or backend. But I also like that the whole model is web based and HTTP based, in the sense that everything on App Engine is an HTTP request. And sometimes I think it's difficult for people coming from, for example, a Node.js background to easily translate to that, because for us it's much more like they have a process that is running, and this process has like dedicated memory, and it's processing a lot of requests, but they don't think about everything is an HTTP request. They don't think about chunking their processing into multiple HTTP requests. I think that's a big difference, and that's one of the challenges of adoption for App Engine, is where people are used to resident process and resident memory, and they come to App Engine, and then they have all these instances that start and stop.
Yeah, right. But when I realized this, it was like it simplified things so much. I was so happy that I could
It's a really easy model to put your hand around it. Like
yeah.
it's really
Yeah, when I first learned App Engine, that task queues were my favorite thing too. It's so powerful. Yeah.
But yeah, still, is there any like project that you are not using App Engine for? Like, is there any limitation to you bump and you say, okay, I can't do that on App Engine. I will just use a dedicated server.
Yeah, from my experience, this just like today is off the top of my head. There's one thing that I still can't figure out how to do. It's so it actually started when I got my laptop broken, and I had like a couple of last days work on it, and I couldn't get to it. And I was thinking, well, I mean, couldn't there be couldn't I just all do it on the web, just programming, so like what you have with Chromebooks, right? So you have Google Docs, right? Whatever happens to your hardware, it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So I was thinking, well, I mean, wouldn't be great, right? So what it is, I created this just simple app where I could edit the code with browser. I think I used CodeMirror library, right? But the thing that I wanted, because I mean I would be missing that a lot, is I also need to run tests, right? And I also need to run like development dev server on my kind of local host or whatever it is. So for that, I think I'd need some. I don't know. I think like compute engine would be good, right, for this. I think.
Or you can you can just use different vectors. Like if you have your kind of staging app where you have your online editor that is like saving some Python code into some text or entities and executing on the fly, you can, like if this is the kind of setup that you have to have some kind of online ED experience, you can have a special version for editing and then like just move stuff to a different version once you want to publish live.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
But that's only possible for Python though, because like that's a time that's for dynamic code execution. Like, you can't do it for Go or Java. But there is an interesting, like there is someone on the team who is working on, like on the development team that has made an experiment where he has been able to run app CFG on App Engine.
Cool.
Which
oh
is
wow. Yeah.
kind of if you think about it. So it's Daniel on our team who has managed like to deploy an App Engine app from App Engine.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
I think it's really, really nice. And yeah, another way to do it is that you could also leverage Google Drive for that. So you could have your App Engine app instead of providing an editor that is like inside the app. You could have the app fetch a file on Google Drive and execute it.
And I actually just pasted into the chat window. There's an interesting blog post that
oh yeah.
blog that just came out that basically lets you run tests and then deploy from, say, your GitHub repo.
And there is also an online editor called CoderBuddy that allow you to deploy to App Engine from their platform and from the editor. But I think you're right. There is not a very like an all-in-one solution for doing this, and there is a lot of different approach and different acts that try to achieve the same thing. But hopefully, I hope that they will converge somehow into a more reliable solution, so people could just develop in the cloud instead of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, yeah.
And do you have like any other suggestion for improving App Engine developer experience or more specific feature requests? You were referring to a big list.
Yeah, what are things that are painful? We want to hear them.
No, it's actually, you know what? Well, yeah. I knew you'd ask me this, so I prepared beforehand. So right. What I wanted to say, first off is, like in recently, you guys, are doing awesome job, at supporting folks on the forum. Like I can, I see, replies flying, all the time, like almost to any post on the forum. I think it was one of the kind of missing thing, like, to just support. So, but I mean, you really, I mean, yeah, like it's great. And well, about the features is the one thing that I remember is there was at some point there was a monitoring API for apps running on App Engine, and I think it kind of stuck at some point, and I don't know, you guys probably working on some improvements to that, and well, it's just one, there's just this thing.
Yeah, Emily knows more about this because she's based in Sydney, where the original team was working on it. I think that they got some feedback from the trusted tester, and they got a lot of feedback, and they're trying to move the project in a different direction now based on this feedback. But maybe Amy has more insight.
No, that's a good summary of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And then there's another one. This is actually I've been thinking a lot about. This is actually kind of related to the simple authentication. It's about the user's API. So right now this when I users API, they support four things, right? Anyway, what you guys support Google accounts, right? So it's either Google accounts or I could also do OpenID, right? Authentication. But the thing is, I don't know if I'm not even sure if it's a good idea, but like the way OpenID works, right? So I could authenticate any user with their external OpenID provider, right? I would be I think it would be nice to be able to do the same thing, but not only using OpenID, but OAuth 2 or any other kind of authentication.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And so there is something really frustrating when you are using OAuth on App Engine right now, is that if you want to have user, so authentication and authorization with OAuth 2 at the same time, basically you
Yeah.
have two grand screen. So when the guy is login, first the App Engine requires a permission using Google authorization mechanism to share his email address with the application. So that's one grand screen. And then after, when you want to get like permission for say Google Drive or Spreadsheet API or Google Plus API, you have another grand screen which for this permission. And currently the only way to mix the two is to ditch the standard authentication from App Engine and instead rely on the user scope for like you do in simple auth in order to authenticate the user. And so then you can finally request multiple scope, and you can say, I want the email address using the user info scope, and I also want to be able to read this drive file, for example. And I would really like if there was a built-in way with the user API to request to do basically what you are doing now for authentication using the user API, but using the OAuth scope user info, and plus request an additional set of scopes, so you can reduce the grand screen to only one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think you did a very good job with simple OAuth. When we can talk more about it later, that kind of provides the same solution but user land. But no, it's a good inspiration for the team to be able to translate that and offer that as a native API.
Cool. Yeah. Good. Great. Yeah.
And yeah, so I would like to continue with more questions. You see, I think we still have some time. So I would like to know more about what your day-to-day App Engine development looks like. Like what editor you are using? Are you using an IDE? Which language do you target? Python, Java, or Go? And if you have like a favorite App Engine framework, library, or tool.
Right. So actually, I like experimenting with different IDEs. So I tried like I don't know, probably a dozen of them. But I used to use TextMate all the time. But then recently I switched to Sublime Text, and I mean, right. So, but like I said before, I mean, the like the the best thing would be if I had some web ID where I could do all the same thing that I do on my command line terminal and Sublime, and it will be. But today I'm using Sublime Text, and I actually so I'm writing I'm mostly using Python, and I do experiment a lot with Go these days.
Cool.
And I actually, yeah, I was just reading, recent updates on Gorilla Web, right? I think probably you're working on that with Rodrigo, maybe.
I know I'm just waiting, but
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
the last patch that I submitted to Go library was Go 2, so you might be interested by it too.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
want, yeah,
definitely.
if you want to hack on Go 2, there is a lot of. I mean, it's a nice library, it does the job, but I think that there is some room for improvement to make it work better with App Engine. Especially there is not a good story yet for saving token to the data store, and I think
Okay.
I mean, you can do it by hand, but it would be nice if there was an integrated way to save tokens to the data store with Ghost too.
Right.
Yeah, I've been watching what Rodriguez has done with Gorilla, and it's very nice. I really like the weight architecture in the sense that you can take any part of it without dragging the whole thing. So I like the component approach that he shows. Instead of a big full stack framework, he has this set of components that you can use.
Cool. Yeah.
He's been also very active on making the templates Go support inheritance, because that's something he's really attached to. And the story from Go templates, it's much more. You can call other templates from other templates, and you can kind of do composition, but you still have to wire all the templates together in your code, and that's something Rodrigo doesn't like at all. So he's actively working on this too.
Right. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Go runtime a lot. So I don't know if you've compared the performance with Python, but it's really interesting. And also what I think about the Go runtime is that it gives you the same, basically the same iteration process that you have when you are developing Python, but just safer with type and compiler. So what I like is that usually when my Go app is compiling, I know that it will work. Whereas
Yeah.
when I develop some Python app, I still have to go into each of the code paths in order to just know that I don't have made a syntax error. So.
Right. 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 Also, yeah, I was impressed when. Oh, sorry, Amy. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just saying, we were thinking of having some more Hangouts featuring Go, so it sounds like you would be in favor of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, go
Actually,
ahead.
yeah. I was impressed. When I just I try. I did try. Real web and Go itself. What I was impressed with. Like the first thing, it's like I wrote a simple app and I launched it and it was like super fast. And yeah, it was like whoa. So yeah, and
Yeah, I like the fact that Go is just using the standard HTTP package. Like you can,
mhm.
like if you are not using any of the Google App Engine API, your Go app is still like a standard web app, and you can run it wherever you want and just compile using the native HTTP package. So I like that because they are controlling the language and the platform. I like that they are really able to blend the two together.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, yeah.
And do you have like any favorite app? You were mentioning Python before. Like, do you have any favorite app engine framework for Python? Any libraries that you always use in every app?
Oh yeah. Well, the first thing that I just love it is this NDB, the new DB interface. So I like, especially what I like is the asynchronous API, and this tasklets. This is just this is great. And also AppStats is a tool that I couldn't live without. AppStats is something that helps me in every every day. And then what I also like is this also e-reporter. It's a package that whenever you have some errors, you can make your app email you these exceptions. So let's say you're running a production application. So you instead of maybe monitoring log files, you can also set it up so that you would get notifications by email when something goes wrong, right? So I like that. And then bulk loader actually helped me a lot in pushing some legacy data into data store. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, I think that the exporting and importing data story is getting better and better, especially since we introduced backups to Google Storage and restore. It's not a lot of people know this, but if you go to the App Engine, Google App Engine project on code.google.com and you just look at the SDK sources, the sources for the backup and restore administration interface in the admin console is actually there. So you can actually look how this feature works, and you can easily modify it to support importing stuff from data store that doesn't come from backup, or writing stuff, writing entities that come from your app and export them to Google Store in a different fashion. But I think that the framework which is there is a solid base where people can build their own import and exporting mechanism on. It's not well known that it's open source and it's in the SDK code.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, it's a great addition. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like if you mentioned the pipeline API before.
Yeah,
I
the
read.
pipeline too. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that's another thing. I think I'd put it to the my favorites list. Yeah, the I did used it a couple times. Yeah, and I liked um, I liked the even if had like terabytes of data. What I like about it is it can that way using pipeline API you can process a huge amount of data, and just not to worry about it and you know let it
But
run and yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned it both NGV and Backline, and there is something special about those two libraries that they are not developed inside the SDK. Like they have their own project on code.google.com. They have, for some, their own mailing list. They have their own issue trackers, and they get synced into the SDK on each release. But I was wondering what you prefer as a developer. Like, do you prefer that they are structured as independent projects, or do you prefer that everything gets dragged into the same App Engine project?
I don't know. I think I like I like the way the NDB, like the fact that it has its own Google group, right, forum, where I think it's because actually there could be a lot of questions related to that. So I think that way people can track or ask kind of specific questions, and I don't really mind to do like import from Google App Engine.ext import NDB instead of, so I like the way it is right now.
But I like the fact that it is like packaged in the SDK, but I also like the fact that they have like their own community. And I think it's important like for the community to build and percolate like around those projects. I wish we were doing the same, for example, for the data store backup and restore thing. Like if
Right.
it was a separate project, we could get contribution more easily, and we could have people like really. It will raise the knowledge that this is there and people can use it, even though it's also inside the SDK. But I think it will deserve to more visibility.
Yeah, exactly. And then plus, when might be some time when you could even use those external projects in some non-app engine related thing, right? You could just take that code and tweak it to your needs and just use it. So yeah.
Yeah, I had like I think we are like there is only maybe 15 minutes left, so I will try to ask my question. The last question is for you. So,
I wonder if we should. Do you think we should just switch to demoing?
yeah, I think that we just have one last section before this demo, and I think that we are fine. Like, do you have any tips for? I mean, you mentioned task queue, you mentioned using the backend, you mentioned but you mentioned caching. Do you have like any other tips that you would like to share with an App Engine developer?
Sure. Yeah. Just a couple. One thing is testing. Right. There's nice test bed framework, and this is just I would have had to write so much code to support my testing environment. So this is really helped me a lot. And this second thing is code reviews. If you're working on some open source project, I think it's this codereviews.appspot.com. This is just, I think it's an awesome tool to get feedback from other developers. And actually, when I was recently I was working on Simple App, there was this guy Eric Higgins. I don't know if you guys know him. I think he's ex-Googler maybe. So I posted the link to code review, and just whoever said like whoever feels like code reviewing. And suddenly I got this, I got it reviewed by this guy, and it was like awesome. He gave me so much, like people, different people see things from different perspective, right? So it really helps in development.
Yeah, I think
And this,
yeah, we are. The Go project is using code review intensively for the development of Go, and like they have this mailing list called GoDev, Golang Dev, where you can see like all the code reviews that are going in. And maybe that's something we miss for App Engine. Maybe we should like have some kind of mailing list where all the community projects that are all the third-party libraries that are using App Engine and building stuff can submit code reviews, so you can just watch it and interact with people who are developing App Engine apps.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
And
well, this.
Incidentally, big props to Guido, who's involved with code review and app stats as well as NDB. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this one last thing that I want to maybe emphasize is I've seen a lot of bug reports on App Engine issue tracker, right? And what I like what I found out to myself too, because I've been on the other side. When you file a bug report, like before submitting it, try to put yourself on the other side of the guy who's who's gonna handle this bug report, and try to like read what you just wrote, and try to figure out whether the guy on the other side will actually understand what's going on. Even better if you could submit a patch to how to fix the error. So yeah, because I've been there, and I know a lot of bug reports when you get this like saying it's not working, and you just don't know what to do with it, right? So
yeah. Yes, I've been doing a lot of work on the issue trackers lately in order to like try to reduce the backlog of issues that we have to triage. But like there is something that if you can submit a test that is reproducing the failure that you are reporting, that's a perfect bug report for me, because something that is really difficult to evaluate is how many times it will take for you to reproduce the issue. And a test is basically the reporter transferring to the one who is going to triage the bug the knowledge of what you need to do in order to reproduce the bug. And I think it's very valuable, and we should have a better story for people crafting tests that are using testbed, for example, or that are for the SDK in order to reproduce a given bug. But that's something that is very valuable to an engineer when they have a simple way to reproduce a problem. And you write about the issue tracker, about like people should really like try to do better submission, but that's something also that is on your plate as well. We should try to improve and to give more incentive to people to do better submission. Like for example, the submission templates, which I'm in the process of refactoring them so it better spell out what you need to do in order to submit an issue. Because it's not always clear to people that they first have to describe the step to reproduce the issue, they have to describe what they are expecting, and they have to describe what they are seeing instead. And just like listing that in the template would, in my opinion, like raise the quality of the issues that we get reported.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, I heard that you maintain a library which is called SimpleAuth. So maybe you can talk a bit about it, and maybe you have a small demo of how to use it.
Sure. Yeah. So you know what, I'm gonna just do a little quick demo, and I'm gonna do a screen sharing. And let me just oh right, I'm gonna share my desktop. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll need. So do you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. So you can find the link to the project on the Hangout description, I think. So what I'm gonna do is first off, just 1 minute where it all started. So there was this website where this the event, right? And what I needed to do is we wanted to invite these PhD school alumni. We wanted them to like RSVP if they come in. The thing is they're not they're spread all over the world, right? So we didn't even know which whether they were using some social networks like Google Plus or LinkedIn or whatever. So what I thought is I'll just put these 3 buttons, and whenever a guy coming in, and they can just confirm it with their preferred account, right? So this is where it'll start, and then I just took this piece of code and I put it into the SimpleAuth, right? So really quick, how you can get started is you can go to the source to the checkout page, and you can copy the link, right? And then you clone it. Let me make it a bigger screen. Right. So you clone it. I'm opening my editor, and so you have this example application. This is secrets.py.template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the content of this file in another one that I just call secrets.py. So it's the same file, only without template extension. And here I have client keys and consumer key and secrets for different providers. So I'm going to go and start with with Google APIs. You'll find links to where to get client secrets on the homepage of the project. Here's one for Google APIs. So I'm going to go here, and this is Google APIs console, and I'm just going to create a project. Let's call it Hangout. Hangout demo.
And you might make your browser font just a little bigger.
Oh yeah, sorry. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So there's nothing I need to enable here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a client. Let's call it demo. Here I'll have to choose. I need to choose web application, and what I'm going to do is, well, let's say localhost, because I'm running on localhost here. Not the redirect URL. We'll need to change it just in a second. So here we go. I get the client secret, client ID, and I get client secret. What I need to do though is change this redirect URI, or the callback URI. I can either change this, or I could even add another one of callback. This is this URL is actually it's explain. If you go through the getting started page, you'll see why it is and how it is formed like this. So let me change this of Google callback. Okay. So I'm just going to copy client ID and client secret. And I think it's about it. So I'm going to go in this example, and I'm just going to run it. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go to my localhost. Right. So this is actually, just exactly the same application as you will see on the, simpleauth.appspot.com. And I just enabled, since I only kind of put real client ID and secret to for Google API. So I'm just going to go and try and log in. And there we go. Demo is requesting permission. This is what what Prapi talked about before. This comes from is the scope parameter that we talked about before. I'm going to go ahead and allow access, and there you go. We have a number of data here. So this is data, and auth info is what's this is what you get on your inside this method. And so what I do is I just print it out on on the page here. And you can see, this is coming from Google Plus, well, actually Google OAuth API, right? So you have some user profile data. Auth info this is what OAuth 2.0. The access token is what you need to interact with Google APIs in this case, and you have this expiration date. And this actually is the result of interacting with Google API using the access token. And just for the demo, I'm printing out here since the simple auth uses web app, whatever web app has already implemented it. So it uses web apps session and auth package. So you already have kind of the session thing already implemented for you. So so yeah, I don't think we have too much time, right? So
that was a very nice demo. Thanks for the live coding and getting everything working at the first time.
So and you can basically do the same thing for Facebook, Twitter, and any other OAuth 2.2 or OAuth 1 or OpenID providers. You can do the same thing.
And are you persisting user credential using a web app 2 session mechanism?
Yeah.
And then it's up to the user to, if he wants to persist his user in the database, to do it from the callback, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what the simple auth actually, it's not a real handler. It's just kind of mixed in that you can add to your real request handler. And what's happening outside of request, this auth request and response is up to the developer, right? So you can use different session backends. You can use any user model that you want. Like the example application uses what's default of web app 2, right? But you can use whatever you want. So
yeah, so I think that's it for the demo. So thanks a lot, Alex, for answering our question and going through simple auth. Is there anything you want to add, Amy? Maybe question for moderator. I don't know if we have this time.
Just for those who might have tuned in partway through, look at the event description for a link to the repository for this code. It's really very nice.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
So thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll No, just honestly, I hope I'll see more hangouts on for go round time and stuff like that.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, and we'll try to do more that are convenient for the Europeans too, so than we have been in the past.
Cool. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you. Thanks very much for joining us.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.